Hello, hello. It's Ashley Kirkwood back again with the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast. And I have with us today Bill Cates, like Bill Gates with a C. And Bill, we're so excited to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about what you do currently and how speaking plays a role in your business.
Sure. I've been speaking for, at least 30 years. I just got my 30-year pin from the National Speakers Association, so I know it's been at least that long. I got started kind of as a wannabe. I didn't really know exactly what I was going to do. I didn't even feel that I came with a lot of expertise, although I discovered I had some as I figured it all out. But the last 25 years, I've been focused on referrals, how we talk about our value, mostly to financial professionals. That's my target market, is the Merrill Lynch's and New York Life's of the world, some banking as well. But happy to help, your folks, other speakers and experts with the referral process as well. So, I've seen it all. We're recording this during a pandemic, and I've been through 9/11 when planes couldn't fly. I've been through the Great Recession in 07, 08, 09 when meetings got cut. I've been through this, and I'm going to weather this storm too.
Yep. No, you definitely will. And it's just a testament to the resiliency of the speaking industry that it has survived so many different things. And I think this probably being one of the most unique. There's not really a map for how to survive this, and not just survive it, but thrive within it. But one of the things that you're known for is the proven formula for exponential growth and relationship marketing. And I think when something like a pandemic hits and speakers need to survive it and thrive within it and continue to serve, I believe relationships are the thing that will get you over the hurdle. And I know ours have proven to be not only valuable, but just the thing that keeps us going day to day. So what would you say is the thing speakers should be doing right now as it relates to marketing in our new world?
Yeah, so it's really, this business is always about relationships, and it really is the speed. It grows at the speed of relationships. And anyone who thinks that Facebook and LinkedIn and all those shiny objects are going to get you speaking engagements, cold mailings, cold emails, it doesn't work that way. We had a panel at one of the NSA conferences recently of meeting planners for associations. And one of the meeting planners said they get all of their speakers through referrals, and the other two said about 90% get their speakers through referrals. Either from their colleagues or other speakers or their audience members, their members of their association, et cetera. So we have to understand that how someone would prefer to meet us is a recommendation, a referral from someone else, right? So that's got to be our prime way of marketing and finding new people. And so, if you don't have a lot of relationships, then it's a little tough at first, but you slowly nurture and grow those relationships. You ask for referrals, you get introductions. And one of the ways that I found works very well is to create a reputation within a specific industry or a niche or a target market. So by doing that, everything does go a little faster. You're able to get more referrals more quickly. You start to draw people towards you a little bit more, a little faster than you would otherwise. So I'm a huge advocate of a very clear target market.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense because, you have a beautiful website here. I'll actually, I love doing this when we have people on with amazing websites. I always like to show it, or at least give you, I'll of course post the link for those who are listening to this on the podcast. But I want you all to see this wonderful website and how focused it is, because it really does speak to what he's saying about how he has built up his business. So one of the things that I noticed right off the bat about your website and what you do is it's really clear that you have a system, almost like a framework that you've utilized to help people. And it's right up top, the proven formula for exponential growth. So I have several questions about this. One is, how long did it take you to develop this proprietary system that you now teach all over the world and help people to leverage?
Wow. Obviously, it's a big question. And it's evolved, and it always has evolved, right? So, And in a minute, I'm going to ask you to scroll down so I can show you certain things on the site, because I think it'll be actually helpful for folks. But go back up for a sec. So anyway, what happened is, so for about 5 years or so, I was kind of a generic sales speaker. I liked prospecting, so it was mostly about that. I liked kind of the thrill of the chase and catching people and all that sort of stuff. But I didn't really have a real system per se. But I was looking for it. I knew that I needed to have a really deep and broad area of expertise. I wanted to write my first book at the time. This is 1995, 94, a long time ago, before you were born.
I was born. I was like, oh, okay, I was young. I was born.
And that's why I've been through it all. But I know I don't look a day over. We won't say.
No, I wouldn't have.
But anyway, so I was looking for it, right? Sometimes we don't always have that clear vision.
Right.
So we just keep taking action, looking for the vision, right? We don't just wait for the vision and then act. We act and wait for the vision. It kind of happens together, right? So anyway, I was listening to some tapes. Some people may remember these things called audio tapes. And it was about referrals, and he had his perspective. And I'm thinking, if I was going to teach this, I'd say this, I'd say that. And then, so in about a month's time, I said, that's what I'm going to write my first book on. It's going to be this referral process. It took me a year to write the book because I taught it, researched. And I'll tell you, because I waited a year and taught the topic and experimented, it was a much better book because I learned a lot. I learned from my audiences. They always come up after you speak and they say, well, I do this and what's the question? And so I learned a tremendous amount. And my last book that just came out, my 6th book, same thing. I'm glad I didn't write it right off the top of my head. I could have, but by teaching and going out there and getting feedback from folks, it actually became a better book. So it was in 1996, the first book came out, Unlimited Referrals. And then what happened pretty quickly after that, I realized that it really was a match for financial services. They wanted more referrals. They knew they wanted more referral. They weren't very good at it. That's a good sign of a target market, right? They want your topic. They know there's a gap there, and they're willing to pay money for it. Very important components. And so within about a year's time, I made the commitment to focus on primarily financial services. I've done some work outside of financial over the years, but from there, then what happened is slowly I developed a system, like you said, this proprietary process, and and we can talk about it. It's turned into video products. I do corporate licensing deals. We do a little over $1 million a year in revenue, and about half of that is from corporate licensing deals through my video training. So we can get into that if you want, but it evolved slowly into that system of changing people's behavior, right? It wasn't just motivational. It wasn't just getting people excited and all that. There really was a system of transformation that would take place if people would follow it.
That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, the website is beautiful. It's beautiful.
Well, so here's what I wanted to point out. If you can, right there, right where you are.
Yep.
So I have 3 what they call personas, avatars, different ways people talk about this, but so I have individuals that will come in and they will look for ways for me to serve them. They're individual advisors, wealth managers, people like that. Then there's the corporations, right? So someone in the home office, the training department, they're looking for ways I can serve them. Can be speaking, could be my video training. And then the meeting planners, the folks, they have a meeting, they're looking for a speaker, hopefully for me, and they click there. So by me identifying the 3 main people that hit my website most of the time, and I'm asking them to self-identify, are you this, are you this, are you this? Then they click, and then they get all the information that's totally relevant to them and what their interests may be.
No, I love how clear this is. And it leads me to my next question about what are your revenue streams? So you have a 7-figure speaking consulting business. What does that look like on the back end in terms of the streams of revenue? And then what would you say is your top stream at present?
Yeah. So if we go back a year, I could say my top stream was getting on stage and speaking.
Yeah.
But I did a speech in November, but really the last one before that was March 12th. I was supposed to speak on March 13th, but someone in this company got COVID, so they shut everything down.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who've been in the business can relate to right around that time frame is when everything kind of shut down. And so it was speaking live. Now, right now, it's my video training. That's the biggest chunk, and it's always been the most profitable because I don't have to travel anywhere anyway. Right. There's a little bit of deliverable from me, but it's very minor. So most of it is just people getting the training and going through it, and I don't have to do much for it at all.
And would this be the corporate licensing training or the individual training that people can
mostly the corporate side. We do some individual. It's not a big cash part of it, but that's part of our revenue. So for instance, we charge $700 for our main thing for individuals. And we probably get one of those a week. All right. Okay. So it's not a lot, but the people who go through that are usually fairly experienced, successful folks, and they talk about me to others. So we found that most of our work has, not all, but most of it's kind of come from the bottom up, meaning a financial advisor, a professional will use the system. They like it. They talk about it, talk to their managers, maybe a regional or a local person will then bring me in some form or another. And then the home office gets wind of it. And that's when the corporate folks come calling. So that's the way it's gone in most cases with most of my deals. So we still want to, we'll call the individual programs kind of the farm system, to use a baseball metaphor. We create exposure for those, and it's a little bit of revenue, so it's not bad. And some of those folks, we also use that with coaching. So coaching is a big part of what I do, a lot more now during the pandemic than I ever did before.
Right.
Because it's my way to help people right now. I'm not getting on airplanes. I have more time to do it. I'll tell you something. I don't really like to coach a lot, even though my company is Referral Coach International, and I do get the irony of that. But what's happened, especially during the pandemic, is that it's really put me in touch with people and what they're going through. Mm-hmm. Right. So between interviews that I do for speeches, and I always interview folks for if I'm going to do a speech, especially a bigger event. And then all the coaching I do with folks, I've become a bit of a curator or a conduit of best practices throughout the industry. And people now come to me, Bill, we want to hear what other people are doing. What everyone else out there is doing. Can you, help us with that? And they love that. And that's something that's really evolved mostly over the last year or so because I've done so much of it. And that's how we stay relevant. How we stay relevant is by being so in touch with our marketplace and interviewing people, coaching. I'm going to do a podcast in Q2, and it's going to be all about these interviews that I do with people. And so I discovered that I love interviewing.
I do too. I think that's why podcasting works. You have to love interacting with people and learning more about their stories. And I've just learned so much through the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast and hearing how other speakers have pivoted and done things during this. But I wanted to go back to something you mentioned earlier about the corporate licensing. Because I think I'm a trademark attorney by trade. I went to law school.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know you were an IP attorney. That's great.
Yeah, IP attorney. I founded a law firm called Mobile General Counsel. And I still have a law firm. We have people who help with running the firm. I try to sit in the founder seat and the strategist seat for our clients. And then I run Speak Your Way to Cash because I love getting, just getting to people, helping them with things. But one of the things we talk about a lot, because we negotiate licensing deals through our firm, is people are so interested in how to license their speeches to companies, but it seems a bit mystified. And we teach a little bit on it from our end of things. But how could you go from, let's say you're a new speaker, your stuff. We work with so many therapists, for instance, that have developed systems for staying calm during chaos. And they want to license out a training like that to a corporation, but they don't have the relationships. What would be the first step? And how do you structure those deals? What are the ways in which you found is the simplest way to structure those deals? Because you can do licensing deals, as you know, in any number of ways, and it can be very confusing on the enforcement and all of that. So how have you found that you can structure those deals? Well, first, how do you get those deals? That's what everyone's wondering. And two, how do you structure those deals once acquired?
Sure. So let's see where to start. How do you get the deals? a lot of it for me came from creating a reputation in an industry, and people would start to seek me out. So that was part of it. Also, it's having a good system, a good process that produces nice results. The first one came to me a long time ago. Mutual of Omaha came to me, and they were taking me around the country doing these programs, and said, Bill, you know, we love this, but we can't afford to do it all the time to get you to all our people. Do you ever do licensing deals? So I have to say the first one was suggested to me by a client, and I actually had done one before that was a little different. So of course I said yes. And
Right.
and so we in my case we did a video based one where I took all my material, my course, and I put it in video form. So everyone who went through the program would get me on video, and then it'd have a facilitator. And we had a guide that said, stop the tape here, start the tape here, you know, hold this discussion, ask this question. So it was really, you know, very well laid out for folks. And now some folks will do what they call a train the trainer, where they'll license them the intellectual property, the system, the process to the company, but then the internal trainers will train it. I never did that. I'm kind of glad I didn't, because number one, that is messier. Number two, the client doesn't get the same experience. Now everybody just gets me delivering the training. So there's a consistency there. And then they use facilitators rather than having someone to really train up on the system. Now, the better the facilitator understands it and appreciates it, obviously the better facilitator they're going to be.
Yeah.
We moved from tape to CD and DVD, and now everything is online. And so I licensed the right to use the intellectual property, the videos, the collateral material like the handouts and scripts and all kinds of other materials that I've created. So they have the right to use that material to train their people for a certain period of time. You never, ever, give a license in perpetuity.
Yes, I knew you were going there. Thank goodness you did. Yes,
unless they pay you a lot of money.
Yeah, or they pay you to develop it specifically for their organization. So you're kind of getting a corporate, an instructional design deal.
Exactly. And I had one of those. And let me tell you how it really worked. It's pretty cool. So I had a company that wanted that. The guy didn't want to do a regular licensing deal. He says, I don't want to fund your retirement. I go, well, okay. What do you have in mind? And so we created kind of a version of my stuff, but they didn't get everything. And we adjusted a little bit for them. And they paid me a very nice, bit of money for that. And so I knew I probably wouldn't sell anything to those people, anymore for a while. But what happened is all of their newer folks got trained on my stuff, right? We actually recorded everything live. So we had a big audience. They recorded it with multiple cameras, and then they produced it and they put it out. But what's happened is a lot of the folks that went through that a few years ago, they're now managers. They're now in leadership positions. And last year and this year, it's been all that company. That's been my big bread and butter company for the last 2 years, because of that thing I did so long ago in perpetuity. So they actually own the right to that. But eventually that stuff starts to get a little old.
Yep.
And, video you produced 2 years ago doesn't look as good as video you produce now. And so it's actually turned out to be a pretty good deal. But generally speaking, no, not in perpetuity. I did a program with Merrill Lynch, had a large deal with them, and I made it domestic only, right? In the contract, I said, for your domestic advisors. And I'm glad I did that, because they came back to me and say, we have advisors in Europe and in Asia. And I like the way they phrased this question. What would it cost to open the license up for them? They didn't say, could we include those people?
Right.
Nice guy Bill probably would have said, sure.
Right.
But they said, what would it cost? And so I said, oh, okay.
Yeah, because they had limited use rights. And I think that comes to structuring your deals for profitability. So making sure you're not giving too much, and all the things that you exclude become additional packages that you can then sell later if your deals are structured appropriately. So I do like the way that they phrase that. But I have a question for you, because we had Shep on here who does a lot of customer service speaking, and he also talks about so he talked about the way he does his licensing deals. And we typically do large lump sum or annual fee with updates, so that we can update the training, because a lot of them are in DEI stuff, and we need to update that annually or every 6 months. For some people, they get like a 30-day use license of a particular training that we did, so people can do replays, etc. But for the most part, we do lump sum. But he does individual. So if they have 500 people, each of those individuals is going to pay a set fee, or they charge based on the number of people that are going to go through it. Which way have you found is more beneficial and easiest to manage administratively?
Lump sum, without question.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah, I mean, I like to get a sense of how many people they're putting through, so that can give me a sense of pricing. What are they willing to invest per person and what I train and such? But I don't want to have to keep track of all that, and who's going to keep track of who goes through and Yeah. Right. So now with my smaller deals, we do a per person with
quantify smaller deals, because for some people that's like $100. So for a smaller deal, what are you talking, like less than?
Yeah, so we're talking about $3,000 to $10,000 deal. Okay. Then it's a setup fee. And then it's in my case $99 per person. And then once it gets up to about 100 or more, then it turns into more of a lump sum licensing deal, where they get the right to train everybody. Now, I'm coming out with a new product, and I may try a lump sum even with a smaller deal. The problem is with smaller companies, or in my case, like insurance agencies, subsets of the larger company, then they're not all the same size, and not everybody can afford. So let's say if I'm going to charge $5,000 for this, the smaller companies would balk at that, and the large companies would be piece of cake, right? So I'm not sure how we're going to go there, but you want to make it as easy as possible. You don't want to have to be tracking all these people and all this stuff. And so I used to have this very complicated matrix of pricing, and I dumped that because it was just confusing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'll be too confusing for them, because I always tell my speakers, no one wants a speaker that's going to give them additional work. Like when we come in to speak, I like that we host it. We have the technology for it. We create the landing page. We even have our copywriter send them emails to promote out if we're working with a university or a company that doesn't typically get good attendance. We advise on that. We make the flyer. Like, we try to make it as easy as possible. Just say yes, pay this invoice, sign this contract. Let me help you. So I try to do that.
True. Yeah, it really is true. And they can't they can't visualize the possibilities like you already know exist. And they're going to get a much better product if you're able to do most of that, or at least walk them, hold their hand step by step.
Yeah, definitely.
So they really know what to do with it. So good.
Yeah, for sure. So for the speakers who are listening, who are like, okay, I am interested in doing this. I do have a great product. I have the technology to administer this, because that's a whole nother thing. Is like, who's hosting it? Are you giving it to them or not? Are you going to host it? Are they going to pay for the hosting? But if they have all that figured out, what is the job title of the person they should be attempting to build relationships with to sell this into corporations?
Yeah, well, it's going to depend on what you teach, right? So in my case, it's sales oriented. So it's usually going to be the senior executive of sales and distribution. Could be marketing and sales. Every company has slightly different titles, but for me, anyone who is the main head person over the sales force. In my industry, they call it the field force. But if you have something that, let's say, is a wellness type thing, right? Reducing stress, then that's probably going to be HR. And most likely now, HR is not usually the best way to enter a company, because first of all, or training can see you as competition. Yeah. And they often feel they can do it in-house just as well. I just had a company that has a licensing deal with me, and they said, yeah, we've been trying to do it in-house for a long time, and we want to get you more involved. So they're getting me even more involved in the licensing deal because they realize they can't do it in-house. So you don't usually want to enter through HR or training, although sometimes they'll reach out to you. I mean, I've had training people contact me and said, our folks want to do more of this, but it was usually determined by someone above training or someone above HR. So, essentially who owns the result? That's what you want to think about. Who owns the result? If it's sales oriented, then it's going to be someone around with sales and marketing. If it's turnover, who owns the turnover? Is that HR? Yeah, but maybe not. Maybe it's COO. And so you probably start with those people, and then you get referred into training, HR, whatever, to then offer. And you have to be very respectful because you have to know that, they're being told to use you by someone above them.
Yep.
Sometimes they'll embrace it, not a problem. And sometimes they're a little, who is this person? Why do I have to do their stuff? We could figure this out, right? Of course, they can't because they don't have your expertise and your history and all that. But nonetheless, so that's a little bit on the selling side. What else? She asked me something else in that question.
No, that answered the question. It really did. The job title of the people that they would reach out to. And then I guess for people who are just getting started, because we've talked a lot about relationships, leveraging those relationships, building upon what you already have. And for us, since we have clients, frankly, we can do that. Like I could literally go back to the hundreds of companies and colleges that we work with and just re-engage all of them on a particular level. But if someone is just getting started, what marketing campaign can they employ, or where would you suggest they start having these conversations without coming off as an intrusion to someone's day?
Yeah. Well, I would definitely pick a target market. And the reason I say that, and it may not be one you'll live with forever.
Yep. But
because when you approach these folks, you want to approach it with some understanding and knowingness, appreciation, call it empathy, which is really understanding and appreciation for their situation. And so how you describe what you do is going to be more relevant to them. So let's say it's the railroad industry, totally hypothetical, probably you wouldn't do it, but or what are the challenges? What are they going through? What are the opportunities that they want to make sure they don't miss? Learn some of that stuff first. And all right, I'm not going to ask you to write a book right off the bat just for the railroad industry, but take some of your knowledge, write an ebook, write a guide that's specific for that industry, interview a couple of people, do some informational interviews. Maybe you got a friend, a colleague from past life, whatever. So you can learn about this and then write something related to your topic. So when you send something to them to look at, they see that you get them. You see, what they don't want is people with generic knowledge coming to them with a generic offer.
Yep.
They want relevance. And
you don't want that either, because it'll really hurt your confidence if you're speaking to a group of experts or people who specialize in one industry and you utilize the wrong terminology, or your suggestions are based, or you recommend something that is illegal in their industry. Like we speak to pharmaceutical companies. They have changed over the years, the pharmaceutical sales reps, what they can and cannot do. So we can't go in and say, buy them a yacht. You know what I mean? Like invite them to a dinner, spend $70,000. Like that could be totally faux pas. Same with government. There are regulations that are behind that. So you don't want to get up there and be totally unprepared and totally off kilter with what you suggest either.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a part of it's on the sales and marketing side. And then eventually, if you do secure the engagement, then also you want to do even a lot more research. You're absolutely right. But they can tell if you kind of know their world or not. I mean, do they call their folks clients or customers, right? Do they, just get a sense of their world a little bit, what their challenges are. Then you can go to them and say, I understand a lot of folks in the industry are having this challenge. How are you experiencing that?
Yeah.
And don't just say, a lot of companies are having challenge with the pandemic. All right. Well, duh. You get a little more specific to their industry.
Yeah.
And then it's more likely they're going to pay attention and notice you. So when I first got started in this business, and the principles have not changed. When I first got started many, many moons ago, people didn't use video at the time much. It was mostly audio, and I wrote a book, and I'd contact people, and I'd say I'd love to present myself as a resource for a meeting. I'd love to send a copy of my book. You could say ebook, whatever, and audio of me in action. They go, sure, send it on. And then I'd call them up, and they'd say, well, we haven't had a chance to look at your book yet, but we listened to the audio and we like it, and we'd love to book you for a meeting. So that's how I started, and that's what worked, and it worked very well for quite some time. Now, of course, you've got to have a video. If you are in the speaking business and you do not have a good quality video of some sort, whether it's a polished demo or at least a video of you doing a full program, you're pretty much dead in the waters.
Yeah.
Unless someone saw you speak somewhere. Right. Then they've seen you, and okay, they don't need the video, but otherwise you got to have that.
Otherwise, especially in today's day and age, you can make a video right now. You could get off from listening to this and go on Zoom and have some good lighting and create a great video and send it around. And
well, especially if you're selling a virtual program, right? I mean, it's real simple.
It's virtual, so it's good for them to see your lighting is going to be good. They're not going to hire you, and then it's all dark and they can't hear you and all of those things.
Let me tell you a quick story, if you don't mind.
Of course.
So this is early on. I was active in our local speakers association, and this guy called me up. He says, Bill, this guy from Georgia, Atlanta, is calling me. I'm only calling you because you helped us with our speakers university. I don't know what it is. Just call the guy. Okay. So I called him, and he was looking for speakers for this big contract for the United States Postal Service. And he needed a video. This was a long time ago. I didn't have video. So I had a friend who ran a hotel or managed a hotel or something. I went to a hotel. I got a videographer, got a few lights. I got a little stage set up. I put chairs around the room, just scattered. And I delivered 20 minutes of a mock speech, looking at the chairs. Each chair represented a person in the audience, like that. And I got the job working for this guy, and I did 150 speeches over 2 years for him. Now, I'm not saying that you would necessarily want to do it like that, because sometimes they can tell when it's real or they can tell when it's fake. These speaker showcases that people do, you can almost always spot a speaker showcase. But with that said, you got to have the video, and you got to come up with that. And so if you don't have a speaking engagement, how do you get the video? Well, I'll tell you what I did for one of my training programs. I found a large studio. I had a client bring in 50 of his financial professionals, and we did a day of training. They got it free, and I got a great video out of that I used for training. I used for speaking, promos. I used it for a lot of different things. So just get creative.
Referrals, good recommendations, good reviews.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
You may have gotten some good reviews from that as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, all kinds of good. Yeah. I got audience interaction. We did testimonials afterwards. We leveraged that body of work for a lot of different ways. So yeah, just, you got to get creative, but you got to have that.
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes so much sense. So we've talked about so much good stuff. You've shared so many insights that I really appreciate. For those who own businesses, because every speaker who is looking to do this professionally, especially those I work with in the Speak Your Way to Cash Academy, most of them have a core business that may or may not be speaking, and they're looking to add speaking as a revenue stream and or make speaking and consulting their core business. What is the system that you utilize high level to get referrals? What is that formula for exponential growth?
Yeah. So, serving your clients well, doing good work for people, as we need to do, will create incremental growth, right? Anyone in any business, I don't care what the business is, should be getting some word of mouth, some referrals, some introductions, just by the virtue of doing a good job. All right.
Yeah.
So that's that, and that counts, by the way, right? Unsolicited referrals count. But if you want to grow exponentially, you have to find a way to be proactive for this. You just can't wait around for it to happen, because it may not be enough. It may not be to the right people. And so essentially, to create exponential growth, you have to start to ask for introductions. And I know that makes a lot of people nervous. They don't want to look needy. They don't want to look pushy. All the different mental stuff that goes on in people's brains. but essentially that's what you need to do. And so whenever I do any kind of engagement, I always have a reinforcement call after the engagement. I used to call it a debrief, but I realized debrief, that sounds more like for me, for my help. It doesn't, it doesn't add value to the relationship. So
Right.
now I call it a reinforcement call. And I say, look, let's talk about how we reinforce the message. I have some articles I've written I'd be happy to give to you for free. I have some other programs, so some free, some not free, but we do a reinforcement. What's the plan? How are we going to reinforce that? And then, of course, if they're happy, then I will ask usually for a couple of things. I'll ask for possible introductions, and I try to learn a little bit about their world and who they might be able to introduce me to. It's always better to come with some suggestions. So a large company, it could be other divisions within the company. If it's an association, if it's at the state level, it could be to other states, or it could be the national, or the national, it could be the states. So we know where we want to go with this request. And then I often ask for a testimonial. As my friend Rich used to call it, a testabalonial. And so I am the king of getting testimonials. Used to be just written, and now, of course, we're trying to get as many video testimonials as we can. It's getting easier and easier for that. Very short, very specific, and they're a cousin to the referral, right? Because they're the social proof. If you think about it, a referral is just a form of social proof.
It is.
Right? And it's one of the highest forms of social proof. And so you just ask, and some people will give them to you and some won't. Don't worry about whether they give them to you or not. But if you ask enough and you look for the opportunities out there, there's a lot of people, if you do a good job for them, they want to help you too.
Yeah.
I remember when I first got started in the business, I had a couple of guys in the industry. They just took me under their wing, and they said, Bill, you got a great message. We're going to help you be successful. And, so that'll happen if you put it out there and you look for it.
Yeah, definitely. That makes so much sense. And I like what you said about systematizing it. We did not call them reinforcement calls. I think that's a great way to phrase it. We would just have our wrap-up calls, which we always schedule before the event happens.
Right.
And I actually use that call as a time to go over the data that I've collected from the audience, who has given me great data about what they liked. I have the average numbers for the rating out of 1 to 10. I have what the audience wants to see next. I have trends compared to the industry trends that I can show them. And I think when it's data driven, it's just a reasonable next step for me to also re-engage that client, because the audience has already said, we'd like to see these 3 things next, and we want you to talk about this more. And typically the themes from audiences, I wish it was longer. I wish we weren't, because especially when it's virtual, we don't have time for breakout rooms if I'm only there for an hour, hour and a half.
Right.
I think that is critical, what you said about making sure you have that post-event engagement. And I think making it consultative so that they know you're not just having the call to get all this stuff from them. You want to give them some value and information, like you mentioned, about how to reinforce what you taught.
I've done a number of talks at the National Speakers Association, and some of them have been on referrals. And I remember one time interviewing a bunch of other speakers, some of them pretty high fee speakers, 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand. And I would talk to them, how do you follow up the speech? What do you do afterwards?
Right.
And they go, huh? So this client would invest 10, 12, 15,000 or more, and they didn't even follow up. First of all, that's just bad manners. Second of all, it's bad business.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, you got to do that. Certainly the wrap up is not a bad way to do, especially if they know you're collecting some information that they're going to want to see, right?
Yeah.
So it's got to be mostly about them.
Yeah.
Right? How is this wrap up call, this reinforcement call, going to be good for them? So they'll do it, and then you can then bring some value, and then you can leverage and get some referrals or testimonials or something, some combination thereof.
And I think as I've grown the business, getting that data has been critical, because like you said, people are spending a good amount of money. And so if we're coming in and it's 15 grand for an hour and a half talk, they want to see, I love to do the pre-event questionnaire and then the post-event questionnaire to show the change of ideals that has happened from before we started to after, but it also helps them justify the cost to their superiors, whomever. because it may be that you're the highest paid speaker they've ever hired, or this is the biggest package they've ever purchased in this vein for what you're doing. And you don't want that to be like, oh, that was nice. Like, it needs to feel a little bit more than just someone came in and talked about some stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. The days of just showing up, doing your thing and leaving, I wouldn't say are totally gone, but they're going, right?
Yeah, they're going.
People want more. They want more value. Yeah. Good.
They want actionable intel, especially now, because people really do want to help people get through this period. And that involves them knowing how they can do that. So I think that was great. Well, Bill, this has been time well spent. I really, really appreciate your time and your insight. How can people stay engaged with you? Would you recommend they join your mailing list? And if they want you to speak, what is the process for getting you on their stage?
Sure. Obviously, the best thing is to go to my website, which is referralcoach.com. And then, as I've already seen, they can scroll down and find, who are they and what they want to do. Even if you're not a financial professional and you still want to learn my systems, you can do that. It really applies to anybody. So if you go to referralcoach.com/resources, all in lowercase, then we've got a lot of free stuff. You can subscribe to our weekly tips. Got a brand new book out called Radical Relevance, and it's all about how you talk about your value. It's about targeting markets and all that sort of stuff. RadicalRelevanceBook.com. You'll learn more about that. And I think that's enough to get into my world, and, would love to talk to you.
Nice. And we'll definitely post to all of those links so that you all can get into that and learn more about that. We really appreciate Bill's time. This has been so exciting, so much fun. If you all enjoyed this presentation, please continue to listen to the Speaker Ready Cash podcast. If you are a speaker, I work with a lot of women speakers, especially women of color speakers with advanced degrees who are looking to convert that expertise into 5- and 6-figure corporate speaking contracts. Please do apply to the Speaker Ready Cash Academy.
Right.
Keep listening to the podcast, reach out to Bill. And share with a friend who could get value from this presentation, because these are people whose time is valuable. They don't always just sit down and share all these wonderful jewels that we've heard today. So thank you all so much. We will talk to you next time.